Here's the story that everybody was talking about yesterday. This is in Mediaite here. Twitter's former security chief blows whistle on social media giant, alleges they buried egregious deficiencies. So let's go through the claims here. A former security chief for Twitter filed a shocking whistleblower complaint against the company, warning of major security flaws, extreme mismanagement, and a significant lack of oversight. CNN and the Washington Post obtained a redacted 200 disclosure filed last month to the Justice Department, the FCC, and the FTC. The filing was submitted by Peter Mudge Zatko, who was hired by former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey in late 2020 after a significant hack the social media website experienced. In his complaint, Zatko claims that Twitter's top executives allowed many of the company's employees to have access to some of the platform's main controls and sensitive information with little oversight. On top of that, he claims that these executives have deceived federal regulators and tried to cover up security deficiencies, deceive federal regulators, and falsely portray Twitter's data management in a positive light. So, look, I mean, random side point here, but the fact that you had like lower level employees with access to the main controls of Twitter, I wonder if that in part explains what happened with the censoring of the Hunter Biden story, which was so extreme and so absurd. You literally couldn't even DM the article to somebody because it was banned. You couldn't post it on there and you couldn't DM it to somebody. That is an incredibly high level of censorship. And I wonder if you had somebody who was maybe not at the top of the chain there who was making that decision, because I think Jack in the aftermath of it like apologized and said it never should have happened in the first place. So then who made the decision? Who actually banned that? It's an interesting question. So this is from CNN's report on it. Zatko further alleges that Twitter's leadership has misled its own board and government regulators about its security vulnerabilities, including some that could allegedly open the door to foreign spying or manipulation, hacking, and disinformation campaigns. The whistleblower also alleges Twitter does not reliably delete users' data after they cancel their accounts, in some cases because the company has lost track of the information, and that it has misled regulators about whether it deletes the data as it is required to do. The whistleblower also says Twitter executives don't have the resources to fully understand the true number of bots on the platform and were not motivated to. So one of the points that I see a bunch of people making in regards to this is, oh, this is going to help Elon Musk in his now lawsuit going on with Twitter, because of course Twitter is trying to force Elon Musk to buy the company because he agreed to a number, then he backed out of the deal. And I don't know about that. I don't know if this is going to help Elon Musk at all. A lot of this stuff strikes me as like not particularly relevant to what's going on in that case. Now you can make the argument about the bot thing, but I don't know how convincing that argument is even without these leaks. Like, oh, Twitter, they misstate their number of bots and whatever. So I don't know if it's going to affect the case. That's my point here. But the leak is certainly interesting coming from this guy who was working at Twitter. And I'll tell you more about this guy at the end. There's an analogy of an airplane, Zatko said in an interview with CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan. You get on an airplane, and every passenger and the attendant crew all have access to the cockpit, to the controls. That's entirely unnecessary. It might be easy, but it's too easy to accidentally or intentionally turn an engine off. Zatko says that he tried to warn the company about its vulnerabilities, address its technical deficiencies, and bring them up to standards set by the Federal Trade Commission. His complaint says the Twitter executives withheld dire facts about the number of breaches and lack of protection for user data, according to the Post, instead presenting directors with rosy charts measuring unimportant changes. Reports go on to describe Zatko's tense relationship with Twitter's chief executive, Parag Agrawal, who fired him in January amid claims of poor performance. Zatko, however, claims that Agrawal and his allies pressured him into cherry-picking data points for Twitter's board of directors and to minimize the extreme egregious deficiencies he saw in the company's approach to cybersecurity. Twitter spokeswoman Rebecca Hahn offered a rebuttal to Zatko's complaint, referring back to the claim he was fired because of his poor performance and ineffective leadership. Quote, while we haven't had access to the specific allegations being referenced, what we've seen so far is a narrative about our privacy and data security practices that is riddled with inconsistencies and inaccuracies and lacks important context. Han says, Mr. Zotko's allegations and opportunistic timing appear designed to capture attention and inflict harm on Twitter, its customers, and its shareholders. Security and privacy have long been company-wide priorities at Twitter, and we still have a lot of work ahead of us. So, this guy is a little suspect because he worked for the U.S. military. And I don't know what kind of axe he might have to grind against Twitter. I don't know how accurate what Twitter is saying is when they say, oh, he was like a terrible employee, bad at his job, that's why we fired him. But the general claims that are being made here about Twitter, massive lack of security and all these other issues. Do I think that those are probably true? Look, I'd say yeah. I'd say yeah. I mean, my default assumption, no matter what website I'm on, my default assumption is that your shit is gonna get out, right? I don't even like putting my information in random clothing sites, for example, to buy some shirt I like on some website if I don't really know the website well, because I feel like anywhere you put your personal information, whether it be credit card or whatever, that's all that shit is not really safely stored. It's not. And the fact that they're saying effectively, well, the same thing's happening at Twitter, I'm really not surprised by that. In fact, I would be surprised if it was the opposite. I'd be surprised if they had very rigorous, privacy standards and security standards and everything was top notch. That would be the thing that surprises me. So I guess, this is one of those things where it's like you file it under the duh category, but of course it is also a bombshell because now we know for sure. So I don't know, man. I don't know. This is going to be a controversial comment, but I don't even know how possible it is to secure information to the extent that we all want to secure it, given the current nature of the internet. I don't even know how possible that is. Aren't there always going to be hackers and people who can sort of get around whatever defenses you put up? And it's a scary thought, but it's probably true. And look, I'll go a step further. I think what they're saying here about Twitter and there's security deficiencies and all this, I think whatever the situation is with the government is probably even worse. I think they probably have, phenomenally weak security and all these issues multiplied by 10 when it comes to the government. Because I think that's just the nature of the internet age. And it's a scary thought, but it's real as a heart attack. And so, but you can decide whether or not you trust this guy. You can decide whether or not you think this will impact the Elon Musk lawsuit. But, I mean, bottom line is, Twitter is incredibly reckless. They have egregious deficiencies, as they say here in the title. And, again, I can't say I'm too surprised. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.